So Iain, over to you.
Perfect. I am really excited because we're going to share the container registry UI that I've been working on for a while. And I'm really excited to get some designer feedback. I've gotten feedback from engineers, I've gotten feedback from other parts of the company, and I realized I don't know if other designers have looked at them. So I'm very excited to share it with you.
Awesome.
I have a little deck to kind of walk through the backstory for some context, and then we'll dive into actually the designs. And there's a couple things I'm looking for specifically, so we'll get to that. Can everyone see the CI/CD review? Awesome. Thumbs up are always so helpful. So improve the container user interface experience with robust GitLab metadata. Business goals is basically to start creating a user interface that actually enables our users to be able to do what they need to do with images. One of the big issues that exists with images is many of them are created using CI and the pipelines, which means there's a large quantity of things to manage, but very few of them are really necessary or relevant. So it kind of created an interesting experience that we have to work through. The current UI is a little bit bare bones. So if you go to the container registry, you get dropped on a page that just lists out the different image repositories, and then you can expand them out to see the individual tags. So a tag is kind of like a version of that image. And the information we're providing is pretty minimal. You can't really sort it, you can't really filter it, there's not a way to engage with it. But you can get the pull address, which is the most important thing that most people use, is this little copy thing. One of the technical challenges to keep in mind is that the container registry is not part of the Rails system, so it's a little bit slower at times. So if you have, and some people do have hundreds and hundreds of tags, this spinning wheel can take so long that the UI is now not usable, because it's only had this many and it took that while. And again, it's all built up. There's no way to search, there's no way to filter. It's kind of difficult when you start getting into 6 pages of tags and you need to find a specific one. Where this all came from, we did a bunch of research at the same time we did the package research. So we understood what data they needed. We did qualitative interviews to figure out why they needed it. We did some awesome brainstorming throughout the whole team using think big conversations, as well as just kind of an async brainstorm where we had all of the engineers come together and say, here's the problem, here's the data points, what would you do? Which was pretty fun and exciting. And so we came up with 2 new designs. We try to keep the quick action available, that delete, display more of the robust data about the image itself, as well as where the image came from, which is 99% of the time, the question that our users are trying to answer when they go to the UI is, where did it come from and what built it? We separated out the tags and the image repository list into 2 different views so that that load time is a little bit more manageable and expected. And then we introduced a bunch of different kind of connections and data points that we're going to build out over the next few milestones, now that the container registry and the Golang engineers that we have are fully rooming forward and ready to take on the next step. I'm going to switch to the design and walk through it a little bit more fluidly, but there's a couple of things I'm really looking for. One, does the basic structure make sense? This is going to be a change from their current experience, and so I want to make sure it's very straightforward and very logical what happens. There's a point where there's details of a specific tag, and they're built in an accordion because there's not too many pieces of information related to it. I would love to know, after we go through it, how many is enough pieces of data where it should get an independent page. I'll walk through that more specifically when we get there. We're going to do solution validation after we do the reviews. So if there's anything that, as you're looking through it, that you would call out, that you would want to ask a user, that would be something that's really important. And the last question is, shockingly, one of the more important ones. The container registry is a set it and forget it feature. So it should just work. And those kind of features require a lot of trust. And one of the responses we got during research is that the current UI doesn't look like the rest of GitLab. It doesn't feel GitLab-y. Almost every user said that exact phrase. So the question is, with this new UI, does it look like the rest of GitLab? Does it look as stable, as trustworthy, as functional? And so they can trust that it will just always work like they expect it to.
Hey, Iain, can I quickly jump in? So what did it mean? It didn't feel like GitLab-y. Like, what didn't look trustworthy there? Like, did you have any?
For sure. So one, the basic structure of the page didn't line up. This kind of expand and collapse idea isn't very common, especially when dealing with a category of categories. So that just didn't line up with our users. The way we're displaying the information, even the table UI, I think it recently changed, but it wasn't the same as the rest of the tables in GitLab. And we kind of got feedback that it looks not polished, not as refined, those kind of feedbacks about how it didn't feel like the rest of GitLab. One person even called out, it felt like we took a third-party plugin and just plopped it on a page. And that, from a design perspective, is the worst kind of feedback that you never want to hear, but we've all heard it. So that's kind of where that conversation came from. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. Interesting.
Perfect. Give me 1 second, we'll switch to the design. All right, everyone can see my screen? Perfect. So wanted to drop back onto the container registry page. This would be if you navigated from the left-hand side, went to your registries and hit the container registry. We added a title section and a quick actions setting. So we provide a little bit of context about the registry in total. So how many different images there are, how many different tags in total are there, as well as the overall space of the registry. The last part, the space, is really important because there's quotas and there's maximums of how big that can get, and there isn't a good way to clean it up, so that number is pretty important. This quick actions is the commands that you would use in the CLI specific to this registry. So it's, you copy the pull command and it's like docker pull and then it has the address for you. It's that kind of information. The number one reason why our users are coming to the UI is to check if an image was created recently as they expected. And so I created this moment that is the 3 most recent tags that have been published to the registry. And so it shows you, this is the name of the tag, this is the image it belongs to, and then a little bit of information, as well as the branch and commit information, which is usually like when you have a merge request and it merges in, it fires off a pipeline, the pipeline does this and builds the package and adds it. This commit SHA tends to be the most important information related to a specific tag, because that's what you would paste somewhere else to use it, or to find like what it came from. And then we have that delete a specific tag. Underneath the most recently published tags, we have the image repositories. So this is one single image. This is the image name. This copies that address, which was super important. And then a little bit of information about the tags contained inside of this image repository. This information is pretty minimal, but the way the registry is set up, it's very expensive to get that information. So it can take a really long time to fetch it. So it's one of the reasons why we've kept it so minimal and condensed. This is one of the things that's changing, is when you click on one of these individual repositories, instead of it expanding and showing a table of its tags, we gave it its own detail page, which looks like this. If you notice, it has a lot of the same structures as the most recent tags above, about the commit and branch information, as well as the tag name. We provided a size, as well as Docker has Docker labels, which are always key value pairs. So we kind of added this key and value set to the labels. Not everyone uses them. That's why it's not given a very prominent space, but the ones that use them really want to see them quickly. If you wanted more information about one of these specific tags, knowing that for most of our users, they either want to copy this or they want to copy this, there's the ability to expand. And this is I pulled this UI from the commit UI, where if you get the commit information, you can hit that button, it expands and shows you the commit message. I did that because these are really the only pieces of information that are related to a tag that we can display. If you remember at the beginning, I mentioned, how many of these pieces of information can we get to before it needs its own detail page? This is what I was referring to. Eventually, we'll get to the point that there's 5 or 6 or 7 pieces of data in this list. And so I'd love, from the UX perspective, how many is too many for this and should be moved into its own page. I did create a page for just the detail view of a tag, and it looks so empty that it looks like something's broken. Because there isn't any more information, but they feel like there should be more. So that's why I kind of did it this way. That was a lot of information. Does anybody have any upfront questions or initial comments?
I hate to go here first because I'm afraid it'll devolve into like a conversation about this. But my first like not GitLab-y thing that I noticed, I think you're correct in using outline buttons there, but we break the rule everywhere else in GitLab. I always see those solid with the lead icons are always solid red with white trash cans on them, which I think is probably incorrect if you read pajamas, but it is so prevalent that like I just run with it and like live with like just don't go there and just use the red buttons would be my one like GitLab-y, you know.
Yes.
This
like, is
don't be right. Just go with the flow.
I get you. That's fair.
Yeah, I think like when I first saw the UI, I was like, whoa, all these little UI elements, but that's what pajamas suggests, right? That's what we have to do. Those are the components. So I feel like, is this really the best way we can apply these components, or what can change? For example, you use their, what is this? This is I think a merge request that it's in both, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think most places it's just the regular way. So I think maybe those small polishes might help to make it look a bit more GitLab-y. But then again, we have to pay attention because a lot of what we have in the product right now, it's legacy and it shouldn't look the way it does. So it's a bit, yeah.
Yes, I totally understand and agree with that. I wanted to find the good combination of like making sure we build something based on what we should be building towards, knowing that it needs to feel familiar. Mm-hmm. It was kind of tricky because this is actually a UI elsewhere in the product. That's where I pulled it from. So it's the styling that already exists. Then I was hoping it would be familiar because it is an icon and not really the most straightforward icon to represent a commit in a branch. So if it was, my thought was if I did it identically to the way it was done elsewhere, it would resonate more quickly.
Yeah. And Iain, I think you showed something different in your slides. I saw a different icon for the copy, like copy URL or copy commit chef. But now you're showing the correct icon. Was there a change in there, or was it a suggestion from your side? I just wanted to understand the UI.
This copy button?
Yeah.
It wasn't a piece of feedback, and this is the correct icon to use?
Yeah, but I saw something, I just wanted to double check. Your slides had something different.
Did they? I don't know where it came from then. Welcome to the marvelous joy of iteration.
That's good to know.
But I can actually, this one is actually deprecated. There's a new one, right?
Yeah, I thought so. As soon as Hayana mentioned it, I was like, I'm almost positive there's like a clipboard with a plus for some new icon for copy.
This is the icon. I'm gonna put it on the chat. This is the new one.
Yeah. Where did you add this?
Yes, that is exactly what I was thinking of on.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a note of changing it over.
Exactly.
One of the nice things is that this is a lot of changes, and this is very not MVC in terms of the design. So each one of these elements will go through its own little design process. The next stage is for us to go to our users and say, we're going to add a bunch of this stuff, and we think it's going to look mostly like this. Does it make sense? Does it solve your problem? And then each iteration will get its own evaluation in terms of the design and implementation, as well as technical constraints that exist at the time, stuff like that.
I just have one small piece of feedback. In general, it's great. I don't have any feedback about the UX. I think it's pretty awesome. So there's nothing about that I think it's confusing. Everything's very good. The only thing that I was kind of curious about is the key value tag. Is that a pattern? Do we have that as a pattern somewhere in GitLab?
Yeah, it's referred to as a scoped label, I believe.
Yeah.
If you search in Sketch for scoped, it's the UI element that comes up. To be honest, I didn't know it was there. My front-end developer was just like, oh, I think we have that already. And it was perfect. So I ran with it.
kind of weird to me actually. The for Doesn't it look like a segmented control? Like you will be able to like click on
Switch it. Yeah, it does. I also, my eyes were attracted to the same element.
it's kind of weird. I don't know. It's just so definitely it's not anything about you or like the design decision that you made, but I think that element it's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think I will make a note. I'm not gonna think about it. And when I do user testing, I'll see I'll ask users, like, if you were to click on this, what interaction would you expect? And if they constantly say like it's a binary and it should switch, then we'll know. And if they think
Yeah,
it
I'll be
acts
awesome.
like a label, that might be.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Now that I look at it and you say it, I want to click that value and have it do something.
Yeah.
Ian, I also have a question related to UI. You mentioned tags a couple of times, and I just wanted to understand if the tags that you're showing there are the same tags as in release tags. And if not, yeah, can that confuse users? So that could be a good thing to check during your research, during your interviews.
Yeah.
We are using tags in different ways across the product. You have kind of labels, tags, and this and that.
Yes, there are a couple of things we need to check. For example, we say image repositories here, and that's technically correct. And it's the way interacting with the API works and makes sense in the verbiage, but no user actually refers to them as that. Mm-hmm. And part of the challenge is that the container registry has done something interesting where instead of like packages, you have a package and then you have all the versions of that package. Images should work the same way, but they think about them completely differently. And that's why like the image repository contains many tags instead of containing many images. And so we're going to test that with users because this is technically correct, but if it doesn't make sense to them and doesn't resonate with them, then we're going to have to figure something else out.
Yeah, because also like the icons, you use package, fine, package is package, but then you use the tags that if I'm not familiar with this, I would expect to click there and go to release tags, for example. So that's
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll check that out. Does anyone actually know off the hand if I needed to create an icon, like what the process is? Do I just create one and then submit a merge request, or do we request one from, request icons?
I think Jeremy can actually help you with that. I mean, I think there's a process where you go and you can do it yourself, but I think he can help you because yesterday I requested one for accessibility and he's going to help me with that. So
yeah, I can open a request in the SVG projects. I'm going to link here the guidelines for that.
Yeah, that would be perfect. Because I would imagine in the near future, there's a couple of icons that we'll want, like a tag that actually matches container tags and isn't used as a reference to something else. Or the retention policy is another one where I'm using the icons for like checked and canceled, and the expiration policy doesn't have its own on and off icon. Another example.
I feel like we always kind of do negative things on this. Let me point out a positive. I love the fact that this is not like tabular data with columns. I hate that pattern in GitLab. Thank you for losing a list type pattern. To me, a much better way to organize information. So thank you for that.
That's usually everyone's first, like the developers, when I showed it to them, they're like, there's no tables. And they got very excited.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just we've short-sighted ourselves on a lot of tables across GitLab where it's just they're just bursting at the seams. Everything's truncated. Like there's so many tables where the conversation is, if we have to add one more piece of data to this, it has to be completely redesigned. Mm-hmm. So
for sure. It felt like we were getting there. And that's one of the reasons we went with the list view, is we couldn't add any more data to the table or everything would be truncated, just like you said.
When you scrolled down earlier, was there, yeah, right there. Curious why there's tabs here and I wasn't seeing tabs up there.
Yes. So the reason we're not seeing tabs up here is because this is a collection of tags and this is a collection of images. And so thought it broke the mental model because we use tags to sort or kind of filter the same types of things based on different criteria. So here, a verified tag is incredibly important. It means someone actually went in and said, I am, a maintainer, this is the image to use. And so that's why I kind of got a tab navigation. I've struggled with that because on issues, right, we have the design tab and the discussion tab, and you could argue that they're the same categorical thing, but they might kind of not. So I just kind of steered away from mixing the two of them in that tab. I think was a rambly way of answering your question.
Yeah, and I'll try not to launch into I hate tabs being filters. I get it. We use it all the time. I think this is one of those it is how we do it in GitLab. So I think it's fine here. But every time I see it, I'm gonna mention it.
Yeah, I personally thought that this was a completely different proposal for the same view. Now that you mentioned, I'm like, oh yes, wait, this is something completely different. I was confused. And that's why I kind of skipped my first point, where in this view, you have two columns in the list view, right? So for most recently published tags, you have this info here on the right, and below you don't have. So my first comment there was like, yeah, looks a bit unbalanced. But then I thought, oh no, he's making a proposal with the tabs, and that's having two different lists on the UI. So to me, it's a bit weird. I would personally expect to see tabs there because it's two different contents, yeah, in a page, or something like a bigger header where you can say image repositories, and it's really defined. But just from a perspective of, yeah, that's how I'm used to the product right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does this paginate? And if it paginates, at what point it starts paginating?
Yeah, so this only shows the Lucene 3, so that won't ever need to paginate. This will get a pagination, I think at 15 is the limit for the container registry. Pagination is a whole beast in and of itself because of the way the container registry is built compared to the way we want to display it, don't line up. So that's a can of worms, but yes, technically it should be paginated. Okay. One of the reasons, for example, why we separated the image repositories and gave tags their own UI is so you didn't end up with pagination inside of pagination, which is what technically happens in our UI right now.
Right.
Just not great.
Sure.
I actually want to, just out of my interest, come back to the first comment that you, Mike, did about the trash icon, red, white versus white, red. Curious, is it still, just for my understanding, is it still outdated and supposed to be updated in the pajamas? Or curious, Iain, where did you take this one and why are we not in sync there?
Yes, I think that it is updated now, and it was not when I first started the design. So I think this is the correct secondary default state. And then the primary, which this one should be, I think, is red with white letters. I don't think it should be a question, but now I really want to check. I think this is what Pajama says, and this is what's correct. I think there's a lot of places in the product where it's flipped. That's so my guess there.
Yeah.
This argument rises and falls on your interpretation of this text. And I have it memorized because I've lived this battle before, right? So you should only have one primary button for a given context. Now, the question is this row having a delete button that's primary, is that its own context? Or since there is another primary button on this page, is it not in that context? So I think that's where this really rises and falls, is on what you consider the context.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we see it so much in GitLab, because if you take this row as the context, then you can have a primary button in that row.
Especially when you consider, I think pipelines is an example where they have many actions on the right-hand side. So there would be a single primary and many secondary inside of a row.
Yeah, and I just checked on Pajamas, and it says that yes, the secondary button should be used in most cases. I think maybe not on a modal, for example, when it's really the primary action. But I just think here the pajamas guideline saying that the secondary button is the correct choice, as the user will most likely not be motivated to delete the content. So yeah, well, legacy.
I see. That's really interesting. And and in pajamas, we don't have anything mentioned like what is the context? Is it a row? Is it a page? Is it a table? Is it a section on the page? Anything like that?
No, we don't have. It's very generic, and it says that yeah, the danger button is used for deleting or things that cannot be undone. But the secondary category is the correct choice. They say often it's the correct choice, so it's open interpretation. It would be nice to really improve on these guidelines. Because, for example, if we have a modal, right? I think in this view, it's fine. But when you have the only delete button on a page, does that change the context?
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna. I have to maybe go through that. Curious, just really curious. Maybe later we can bring this discussion up again. I feel like I need more information. I'll go and check.
Yeah. We can open a merge request and then make the suggestion to improve this page. It doesn't have to be something that needs a lot of discussion first. Usually, it's best to have a draft.
Yeah, I struggle with it because I really believe that this is correct, what you're showing here, but I personally
it makes sense.
I like the way it looks so much better with the red one. I don't know why. It's just like a personal choice. Like it would break my heart if we went to this pattern all over GitLab because I don't think it looks as nice. Like just from a purely like visual, like maybe it's because I'm just used to it, but like I just want to be incorrect.
Yeah. My biggest worry here is that, like, I feel we have to agree on this, like, or document it, like, officially, so we are not puzzled, and no other product designer is being, like, puzzled and thrown under the bus with this type of question. I feel like that should be super clear, like, what type of button we have to use. This is why I'm most asking.
Yeah, it is a hornet's nest, too, because we, beyond just the, whether it should be red or white, there is a lot of places where we're using X's, we're using like the circle with the dash in it, like our delete and remove strategy across GitLab is flaky at best.
It almost makes me think that I quite don't get why it's so, even if it's secondary, it still feels too inviting in my opinion, And sometimes I have seen patterns where you just actually enter into a delete mode. So I wonder why we never thought about that, like kind of like, oh, it's time to delete. You go into delete and then you can start deleting things.
Because we also have some patterns, not sure if it's something that is a recommendation, but we have more actions, right? And then that's where the user can copy, delete, or whatever. Perhaps that's something, because would it be best to hide that because you have the deletes to delete the whole thing, and you can delete them individually, which is even more secondary in a way than
right
action.
Is that when you have the ellipses, the 3 dots, and then you click it and it gives you a little menu?
Let me find it. And I also kind of see related to that, I think if we use more white space in this list view, because this is what, 16 pixels, maybe? I think. It might look a bit more balanced with this.
In between each line?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten that same feedback before. So I think that's a really good suggestion of just giving this a bit more space to breathe inside. Because yeah, it is that space is pretty small. My original concern is if a lot of people have UIs that just kind of have this. And so I was wondering if when it got that empty, if the white space would make it look even more empty. But so in that case, we have 2 different users, and so we had to pick one. That's the position I'm in, because some of them will have thousands of tags and some will have 3. And so challenge is unique. I guess the big overall question, does it feel more GitLab-y to everyone? Does it feel like it belongs with the rest of the product? because that's the trigger to help them have trust in something to forget. And that's what we keep hearing.
This feels like GitLab to me. I don't see. It's like, oh wow, this is so foreign or weird.
Yeah, to me it's the same. I think the biggest challenge here is because some of those UI components are not updated in pajamas yet, or they, let's say, don't exist yet, and they might look foreign to people. So let's say that, yeah, you go ahead and implement it as is with the current state of the components. It might look different, and it might look more GitLab-y just because.
Yeah, that's a good point, for sure.
Hayana, you left, but maybe you're here. And why are, like, again, out of the process question, why are there, like, does it take a long time to update them in pajamas? Is it the UX maintainers question, or?
No, this is a development. So whoever wants to tackle, if it's CSS change, I think it's easier. But yeah, if the component doesn't exist, it needs to be built first, and that's a whole different process for the development team.
Like prioritization question.
Yeah. So usually what we do is that we just use what we have because we want to ship things, and it's a conversation to have. But Iain, why did you go with the colored icons in, for example, image repositories? You have some of the icons that are like in gray, yes, and these ones, was this from feedback from users, or you wanted to highlight the sections? What's the rationale behind it?
Yes. So one of the feedback we got from users is that apart from the name, it was hard to tell the difference between the different tags. The different image repositories. So we got that little piece of feedback. And then on top of that, there was the realization that, like, if an image repository has any verified tags, it needs to be really easy to see that, because that greatly increases the likelihood that that's the image you want to be working with. And then the expiration policy is, like currently at GitLab, it's an outrageous amount of space is consumed by the images in the container registry. So knowing if an image repository has this expiration on or off is also really important for like a sysadmin. So I was mostly just highlighting the two most important pieces of data. I'm not sure if maybe I just want to leave the color for the verified tags and leave these as gray. It does feel a little overcolored at times, and then I come back and look at it and it looks really boring. So I haven't been able to land on the right amount of color.
Yeah, I understand. Because when I look at these interfaces, first thing I think it's groups, like the list view for groups, where we also see some of these icons, and yeah, just other places in the UI they're not colored. So I just wanted to understand, but it definitely catches your attention. Like first thing I look at is the tags. That's where I'm going for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll take a look at that again and maybe get feedback directly from users. Like, is it distracting, the colors? Like, is it not actually helpful, or is it, and it could turn into something where it's the expectation that all of these are enabled, and so it's just a red if it's abnormal, that kind of thing.
Can you open this link I just sent, so we can just very quickly compare, make sure that everyone knows what icons I'm talking about. The group view, and I think if you expand one of those, I don't know which one, but yeah, that's also how they do. It's kind of weird. I know that you wouldn't fit a lot of content, but kind of in columns. I don't know. Not happy with with this as well, but just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, that is really helpful context. Thank you.
Seeing it here is actually a good example. So I noticed there was a star on there. What does the star indicate?
This one?
Yeah.
Yes, so if you have a specific tag, organizations that are very large and have like a DevOps team would like the ability for a DevOps manager to come in and identify and say, this specific tag has been verified. I, a person, say this is the one to use. So the star is just the icon I'm using to kind of just share that idea. This is one of those that has to go through its own design process on its own, but that's what the original idea of the star was that
Gotcha.
it's kind of the same as like favoriting it or adding it to a list. It should be that light of an interaction, but it's kind of important for those bigger teams.
My only
What did you
hesitation
expect
with
it to
that-
do?
Well, I
Or
think
four?
I think it is a good icon in that sense. But the previous page we were just on highlights my slight hesitation with it, is that in a Git world, more so in GitHub than GitLab, but stars have a specific meaning, right? It's like, how popular is this thing, right? That's the GitHub star thing. So slight hesitation that, like, you know, there might be some confusion there that this is indicating its popularity, but it kind of is, right? It is the preferred one, but
Yeah.
it isn't like, you know, if it was GitHub for sure, right? Like stars are like how projects live and die there. GitLab less so, but
yeah, I'll add a note to when we do the research. I'll just ask them the question when you give them this screen and be like, when you see this moment right here, what do you think it means? And we'll see what they initially think, and then once they see it in action and see the detail view, I'll ask them again and see if it didn't make sense in the first place, if it made sense once it was kind of explored, and then we'll know how much we need to focus on that interaction. It's a very long-winded answer to say, yes, I agree.
And I think it's the same for the other icons, like
Mhm.
you're using the one for pipeline passed or failed or whatever. So yeah, the red one, the green ones.
Yes.
Can that confuse people because you're used to those icons in such a strong context, right? Pipelines. So is this something, yeah, like what you say, maybe create a new icon or just go with something a bit different there.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good call out. The original plan for the test is to have them walk through what they say each of these pieces of data means. So it'll be really easy to capture if it's not making sense. Awesome.
Do you feel like all of your questions are answered?
Yes, I do. I feel like I got some important notes to check during research. I got some feedback, some more white space. This is going to be great. I'm excited.
Amazing. I feel like there was a quite nice discussion. Thanks a lot, everyone, for your feedback.
Yes,
I made
thank you.
I made all of the notes in the doc, and I'll share the recording after as well if you need to follow up on something. All right, we're close to finish time of this meeting anyway. I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks everyone for participation. I am